I love your background though. That's a real scene setter. There's little stories going on behind there, definitely.
Oh, it's the same as in my room. It's full of musical instruments. I've got a full studio in here,
Oh,
but
nice.
and everything has a story from my past. So yeah, I've got a lot of boys' toys. So my front room is not very girly at all, actually.
But it's all fun. And where there's a story, there's something of interest, isn't there? It's
Oh
great.
yeah, always.
It's going to be so different, isn't it? And I know, you and I have both been sort of, talking about this and sort of sharing, exploring, for years and years, but it kind of feels like now is that perfect storm. Now is that moment where it's going to become real.
Yeah, I feel excited because um, I was saying on my radio show a lot to people, what we need is to just stop all the fighting, just stop and rest and relax for a minute because nobody can breathe and the world is just like spinning out of control. That's how it feels in the head. And I just thought, please just stop. And even so, when the coronavirus hit, there was a part of me that was like, breathe, because everybody has just stopped. And I think if you're looking on a positive level, I think that's brilliant. Because I used to think we work too hard. We don't find time to use our brain or develop ideas that we might have. I used to cry out, where are all our geniuses? How do we know if we've got them working 24/7? Nobody's actually out there playing and experimenting with stuff and finding their talents and just being free to be themselves. So I find this time, especially for creative people, a really exciting time. Some of them might be having a bit of an issue, though, I think, psychologically right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly seeing sort of people almost going into kind of two camps. The one camp where they're really embracing it, and as you say, doing what they probably should be doing, which is kind of taking that little breather and just figuring out, okay, where am I going with this whole thing? What is this thing going to be going forward? What is my life? What is my ikigai? What is my purpose? And then the other camp who are just, oh, I can't wait to get back to work, and frenetically kind of searching for that kind of old world. You just feel, no, slow down, stop, because this is that one pause, that one moment where collectively, probably in a number of generations, this is the only time you're going to get a chance to do this. So you don't miss that moment.
And I think that's really, really special. And
so I am joined today by somebody who probably for many of you needs no introduction at all, a lady who has created some incredible waves on the music scene, working with a whole host of famous global artists, including the likes of Prince. The lady in question is Ms. Kizzy Morrell, who joins me here today.
It's good to be with you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And it's really great to catch up. It's been way too long.
It has. We've been talking a little bit beforehand about what's been going on in the world. Shall we sort of broaden on that horizon?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm really sort of keen and really interested. Obviously, in more kind of recent years, I gave you the big sort of build up about your sort of music career without going into too much detail, which you can, of course, if you wish to. But really, in more sort of recent years, kind of coupled with the sort of radio presentation and stuff that you do as a radio presenter, you've been working a lot with the kind of emerging generation of music talent, particularly kind of in and around Bristol. And I think that's certainly one of the areas and one of the places I want to explore through the organisation that you founded. And I think certainly through Studio 7, you've been doing some amazing work. So I kind of want ultimately to kind of guide you in that direction and get to that point. But as you say, we've been talking about a whole host of interesting stuff that's going on right now. I mean, from your perspective, what's your kind of current take on what people really should be doing, kind of almost like spiritually and holistically, to get the most out of this time?
I think that spiritually we're going through a change. I think the whole universe is going through a change in itself. And I think spiritually, because of this lockdown, our minds have been able to open more and look around. And I think the first thing is about self, looking into self, and maybe you start healing that inner child, because I've spent sometimes in real fear and crying and screaming and not knowing who I am, where I belong, what I'm going to do next, who am I? And as an artist, it's even worse because you're used to an audience and you're used to people. I hate using the word, but worshipping you, being involved in your life all the time. So as an artist, um, it's for some of them it's a little bit different. They will go down a slippery slope, and then they'll start to rebuild themselves, and that's the point where we all need to get to, is that rebuilding is throw away the fear of what we're about to lose and actually embrace the future, because the future is literally ours to create. And I think I'm hoping that a lot of people now understand that, and especially I see a lot of creative people starting to come up with new, even businesses actually come up with new ideas of delivering things, and they have to connect with that creative process rather than that logical, practical process. Because I don't think the world is logical and practical. In fact, we live in complete chaos. And when you try to hold that chaos together in a nice, neat pile, eventually it's going to go, and then we have to clean it up again. So I think we go through cycles of changes. And I think it's important for us as people to look inside. I started doing meditation on the inner child, facing some of my own fears and tribulations of being raped and abused and all that nasty stuff. Hence one of the reasons why I love working with children and embracing them and bringing them into a sense of love and unity where they want to be creative. And for me, that works. It works with the kids. But as self, it's hard facing that child because we ignore it a lot of the time, the inner child that's crying, I don't like this world, I don't like it, I don't like this job. And the adult is saying in your head, well, we've got to do this job because we've got to pay the bills and we've got to do this. And the child in you, but I want to be free. I've got things to say. So it took me a while to sort of get into my own head and understand who I was from a spiritual perspective and as a human perspective, because I am not this body that I walk around in. I am who I perceive myself to be. And I think that's important to understand. And my memories took me way back to abuses and negligence and family situations. And then there was like a change where I started remembering really good stuff started coming up in my memory. And then I felt compelled to ring people and ask people for their forgiveness and, you know, if I've hurt you and all that. So I think it's been a time for cleansing for a lot of people. And I like that. I like that aspect of it. The dying side, I'm not afraid to die now. I'm not. I think it's, I think people misunderstand what it means, death, because we don't know anything about it. But I'm not afraid, and I think all the people that pass on, their energy is still with us in our memories and in our hearts, and we can keep those memories alive. And I think as long as people realize that there actually is a spiritual connection between you, I, and everything else around us, I think that will help ground us more, rather than just listening to the status quo, just listening to another person. Everybody has an opinion. Even I have an opinion. You don't have to listen to what I say or believe what I say, but I have an opinion. So allow me to speak. And from that, you can pick out what you want to pick and you form your own opinion and you create your own reality around that scenario. And that's how I think as individuals we build and grow. And then when you meet somebody and you get that zing and you know that you click with them, then that's because the energies are right. You can come together. And I think in this kind of environment, we've learned this. And I see this with the kids when I'm working with them. when I'm training them on the vocal and the performance side. There's a lot of barriers you have to break through in order to get them to that stage of confidence where it's about getting people to the stage where I don't care anymore, I'm just going to do it. Do it, be free, be free, just do it. I think we're held in fear by society and the rules, because I think the people at the top like to believe that fear can control us. And it does, unfortunately. But I think people are becoming wise to it, so I think they need a new plan, personally.
There's something really interesting about the word that you used there when you talked about the word worship, because that was a really interesting word, because the way that you were kind of sort of defining it, I guess in the pre-COVID situation, this whole idea of kind of ego and celebrity and almost kind of building a persona around kind of how people perceive you, and it's kind of the number of followers means that you win, the amount in your bank balance means that you're winning, you know, that kind of adoration means that you're successful. Whereas I think what you're describing here is kind of like an opportunity going forward of almost kind of redefining that. And I really liked the way you talked about that, kind of identifying with your, almost like your child self, that kind of innocent, authentic, almost like pure entity that you are, rather than just this way that you kind of perceive success in the world. Feels like it's a much more, I'm going to use the word wholesome, but a much more wholesome kind of view, that we've got this opportunity to kind of almost like reinvent ourselves.
Yes, it's organic. I think it's more organic that way, more in tune with what's going on around us. I think we can afford to take a slower pace. I mean, people grow old so fast because I'm the eldest, I'm 57, I'm the eldest in my family, and I look the youngest, and I worry the least, and I play the most, and I'm the most mischievous person on the planet. As you know, I do like to get into trouble, ladies and gentlemen. I love a good uniform. And yeah, I'm just playful, I'm just childlike, and I don't, I try and stay away, or I have warning signals, or I have people around me that feel like I do, or are protective towards it, and keep me away from those negative things because they know how I am. The situation as an artist is a lot of young artists don't realize that they are put on that pedestal at an early stage. They are put on that worship thing. You do become godlike. And I know it sounds grandiose and everything, but when you're on stage in front of 50,000 people, you are their God at that time. They're worshiping you. They're with you at that moment. So I've always held a thing in my heart. As an artist, we have got a priority. It's almost a duty to pass on positive vibes, to pass on good feelings, to pass on good communication instead of all the hate and the violence that people spew out sometimes. If you want to express yourself, do it in your bedroom. But when we give it to the public, let's give them something that we can rise to, that elevates us, that moves us. We know that frequencies change things. I mean, whether you believe in God or not, in the Bible, he created the world by his word. Words are spells when words are important, you know. And I think either in songwriting or when we're talking to people generally, we should be conscious about what we're saying. It all fits into, I think, this new way of being, because if you understand yourself, then you understand other people more or less, or it gives you a gateway to be able to understand other people. If you understand yourself, you become a bit more compassionate about the child that's hurting. You remember that you become aggressive because something happened in your past, but now you can deal with that because you know why your behavior is in this sort of way. I know I'm jumping around a bit, but I think it all links. And like music, I think life is a massive symphony. I do. I just think life is a massive symphony that we're playing, and we are the orchestras of our destiny. I think by what we think, what we do, what we say, who we meet, we are in control, and a lot of the time we're told we're not. And a lot of the time we're told we're rubbish and useless and hopeless. That is not true, people. If you're listening, it is not true, especially the women. I need the women to get tough. Remember, you give birth to life. You bring life into the world. So, yeah. You haven't stopped me, Neil. You know you can do this.
I'm not going to be stopping you through this conversation. When Kizzy talks, because there's always going to be something in there. I know you too well to know that that's going to happen. So what I want to do is talk a little bit and sort of build a little bit on this thing about the engagement sort of style that you have when you're obviously talking and coaching both women and also sort of children and young adults. The Studio 7 project, which obviously has been a real kind of passion for you sort of over many, many years, it's been such a huge thing for you, and rightly so. It feels like it's so much more than what people might expect, which would be, okay, she's going to do some vocal coaching, she's going to sort of, show me a bit about her knowledge and wisdom about the industry, and that's kind of what I'm going to get. This feels already like it is so much more holistic than that, so much bigger.
It is, but what I'm not good at is explaining in written words, hence why we've never had any funding. But passionately, it is. It's about singing. To me is a spiritual thing. When I'm on stage and I'm singing a song, no, I remember one particular session. I was in a place in Bristol playing with Colin Smith. He was playing on the piano. And then he was playing something in a completely different key, which I hadn't practiced. So I had to trust myself because I was in the middle of the performance. I couldn't stop and go, what are you doing? I could have, but that wouldn't have been professional. So I just closed my eyes and just felt it and just went with the flow. And it was next to being close to God than I can actually say. And I know other musicians know what I mean. There's a feeling when you're in a song and it's just everything is perfect at that moment. And when you open your eyes, when I opened my eyes, it was like, where am I for a second? It's bizarre. And with the kids, I want them to no, I want people to understand that music is more than just dots and notes and sounds. It has a meaning. It's a language. And if we get the language right, it can change the way we are. It can change our behavior. And with the kids, I've had kids from quite disturbing backgrounds and a lot of children from disturbing backgrounds. But with music, it kind of opens up a door, one, for them to express themselves, two, to find their confidence. Because even with rich businessmen, I've had sessions with them. I've got one on the boil at the moment, a multi-millionaire, and he's good at everything. So I said, I said to him, well, I've got a task for you. I want you to learn the song Fever. And immediately he started panicking. And I said, you see that panicking you're feeling? This is what all the kids feel like the minute I ask them to perform for me. This is the process they go through. There's a fear, there's a barrier. I can't sing. Everybody hates my voice. Everybody hates me. So you, as the teacher, have to be compassionate and loving to be able to open the doors and build that, then pull down those barriers. I've been to many singing schools where the teachers just shout and scream at you because you get a note wrong, or you've got to do this right, or and it doesn't work. I don't think it works. So I tried a different approach, which was a more nurturing approach, and I know it works. I've worked with schools. I've worked, as you know, I've worked with thousands of children, and I know that my joy is when I actually see them on stage doing their thing. I had one girl who had who'd been raped and abused, and we had a big gig the night before, and I said to her, don't do it, it's okay if you don't. She says, no, I want to. So I got her on stage. I didn't say anything, but she blew everybody away, Neil. She was amazing. All the anger and the energy just went into that song, came out of her little mouth, and the audience just stood up. And even I can feel it now. It was just magical. And afterwards we got backstage and she just fell apart and just started crying, and she says, you know how good I feel right now, Kizzy. Oh, I love you so much. So it is more than just getting up there and singing. And as a coach, I feel very, 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 very honoured for those young people and those teenagers to allow me in their heads. And I think a lot of the time it's because I'm a child myself as well. And what happens is there ends up a reverse role. So they end up looking after me. So they become the adults and I am the child, because they're always telling me off and grounding me. And I think even with an adult coming down to their level or even slightly below, it's a bit of fun. You know, people don't have fun these days with kids. They forget what it's like to be a teenager. And you know that teenagers are going through this psychological process where all their hormones and the nerves are reconnecting. They're growing into adults, so they're naturally going through this conflict. We don't talk about it, but they're going through their own form of psychosis or depression or whatever you want to call it. But it's taken them from the child to the adult, and for some reason the human race has forgotten about that. I've talked about kids about, nobody mentions that apart from the science papers. Actually, the reason why the kids do this is because blah, blah, blah. Or they actually do need 24 hours of sleep because their bodies are physically changing in front of them. And that's why some of them go a bit loopy. And I think teachers and educators need to be more aware of the person, not just the lesson they're providing, but the person and how the person absorbs that information as well. I mean, that you have to get to know the artist or even your students. I've seen many cases in schools where the teachers just completely ignore the students, and you can see that they want the attention and they've got something to give. And if the teacher ignores them, that's detrimental to the child. But then you think, well, how can we watch everybody?
I'm particularly interested in this thing about the way that you're kind of sort of describing the almost like the engagement with music. It feels now to me like the way that you're using music is almost like the music is a tool, and actually what you're working with is something a lot deeper, energy, flow, I think, you know, whatever words you want to use to describe it, but it feels like the music is, that's just the key, it's just the instrument, it's just the vocal piece of the puzzle. But actually what you're playing with here is something much more fundamental than that. Is that, am I right in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about how frequencies work, for example, an opera singer, this is just a simple example. If an opera singer hits top C, what happens? The glass will break. The glass will break. Why? Because the frequency of the glass or the voice, the vibration of the voice matches the frequency of the glass, and they become the same bang. And we can do that with our voices. If you're, for example, in a concert or a gospel concert, for example, and they're using the right harmonies, that will move you, that will shift you, that will change you, and you can't escape it because it's a natural form. The voice will change whatever's around it. And I do believe that. And so I believe that if we're singing positive music in positive frequencies, positive codes, then I'm not saying we're like gods, but we can help change the world we live in. If we understand that everything is made up of sound and frequency, then we know we can manipulate it in a positive way. I had an experience where I went to a conference and there was some flowers, and the woman said, I'm going to do a duet with the flowers. And you're like, yeah, right, all right, yeah, okay. God. Neil, I cried like a baby. They can hear us. Plants can respond. And this woman, she put on these sensors onto the plant itself. She started singing, and the plant copied her. And then something else happened that actually distressed me, turned me the other way. This was a few years ago, so people now are realizing that plants can do this. And I saw another exhibition where they were actually hurting the plant. That I wasn't happy with that. I really wasn't. I had to say something. And she just laughed. I said, "Do you realize you're hurting it? Can you hear it screaming?" So funny. I said, "No, is it?" So it just goes to show that everything around us is alive, and we should have some consideration for that. And we can do that through music. Music is the oldest, I don't know, the sound is the oldest celebration of life ever. And we as artists have a privilege to put that forward, whether in a performance or whether we're coaching somebody. That's amazing. We have a gift that we can use to change the world. The music is the most famous common denominator for bringing peace, for bringing unity, for bringing people together. And I think if a lot more focus was put on that, I think people would find that there's a lot more to this than just meets the eye. And I see it, but I'm not a scientist. I understand it, but I can't write about it because I don't have the right words. Even trying to explain it to you is difficult, because for me it's a feeling. I'm a feeler. I'm an empath. I'm not logical and practical, so I can't give you figures and numbers, but I can feel it. And yeah, music
So
is.
there's a real responsibility in there then, isn't there, both for the artist or the musician and the listener as well, because it's almost like there's a little bit of a dance going on here, is that
Yeah.
as a listener or as a consumer of music, you need to be kind of almost like trying to seek out and align yourself with the frequency, as you've described it, of the music that's appropriate for kind of where you're looking to go in your life and your world, so that you then feel aligned with the artist. And of course then the artist or the musician then has the responsibility in the other direction to kind of give you what you need in a really positive way. Is that kind of how it's working, really?
Yeah, but people use that anyway in negative, even for selling. I mean, there's certain chords that go together that they know, they just draw people in. You know, there's certain notes that people have used to scare off spirits. There's music has been attached to absolutely everything. Sound, vibration has been attached to everything, and it has such a capacity to help us, to make a difference. But when people talk about just singing lessons or music lessons, we just brush it aside. But look at all the ethnic countries, like the Africans, when they're dancing, they ain't just dancing. That music, the moves, the beats, the sounds all mean something. It's not just a bunch of black people jumping around looking stupid. That actually means something, and it changes something, and it moves something. And a lot of it is because those people believe that they have such a faith in what they're doing. And I think maybe some of it comes down to that as well. People having faith in the fact that if we were going to get serious about how music works for the benefit of man, people need to get serious about it and actually think about it, and maybe stop those people that are using it in a negative way to use it in a negative way. Sound clash, yay! Sorry, I just had a vision in my head then.
I love the way these conversations go. Just know it's going to go like this. It's brilliant. It's just so so then I'm just thinking, while you were talking there, I was just thinking kind of, so what would be in it then for the listener or the viewer, kind of obviously consuming this episode? And I think for me, one of the really interesting things is to be very kind of aware when you feel affected, as in
Yes.
altered in the
Yes.
moment of music. I mean, so for me, the
Yes.
perfect example is if I'm watching or listening to David Gilmour, for example, playing guitar. Now, David Gilmour playing guitar, yeah, technically amazing, but there's something more. There's just something, those one or two notes that he can make last for,
Yeah.
5 or 6, whereas everybody else is playing, it's like multiple riffs and like really, really playing fast. He'll play two single notes and he'll make them last. And you just think, oh, that's the moment. And so for me, that would be just a lovely example when you just think, hey, I've just been taken somewhere else, somewhere different.
Yes.
So
Yes.
would you say that people really should then be kind of listening out when they listen to music, rather than just thinking, hey, this is a nice song, actually trying to figure out, well, why? Why is a certain song resonating with me? Is it the words?
I
Is it the
think so.
key? Is it the energy? Is it the artist? Kind of what it's, so it's a really kind of properly listening to the music.
I think people should. We haven't been taught this, but in other cultures, they have been taught to respect music and understand, and music is quite sacred, but not in this country, and I don't understand why. So I think, really and truly, if people love music, to start getting into it, feel it, listen to it, absorb it, ingest it, play with it. When I was little, I love classical music. And I used to have two big monitors, and I used to put them by my ears, because we didn't have like everything kids have got today, right? Just two big speakers behind my ears. And I'd lie on the floor. And in those days, I was dancing, I wasn't singing. So, and I was a brilliant dancer as well, but that's a whole nother story. And so as I was listening to the classical music, I was choreographing dance routines in my head. That's how I would do it. But what I would do is actually, as brain exercise, this is how crazy I am, Neil. I would split up the sounds and follow like an instrument, and then I'd follow another instrument. So I'd like go on this little musical journey of my own, but really get absorb and get into that music and feel it. And there's, music anyway will make you laugh, it can make you cry, it can make you remember things, remember smells, remember sounds, remember people. Music has the ability to do all that, affect your brain in such a major way. I don't understand why we're not using it so much for medical purposes anyway. But I don't understand why musicians don't know than they more than they do, because I think we owe it to our listeners to give them the best of us, don't we? Really, if we want to make a change and we want to make a good change in the world, then we have to do these things. And it does start with, it all starts with the children. If we can help those children to at least understand themselves, to understand the nature of themselves, and the fact that they can do things, because the sound doesn't, it just doesn't happen with just music or singing, but talking, for them to be able to express themselves, to move on in life. So some of them are really quiet. I get some really quiet girls that are amazing singers, but they're really shy, they can't talk, or they can't function in the real world. A lot of us can't, because it's too daunting. The real world, well, the non-singing world is different to the singer's world. That's all I can say. So when we come into the non-singing world, and we've got those skills and we've honed in on those skills, we become better people. We don't hide, and we don't become shy, and we don't become nervous to come out of our houses. We can embrace life, because attached to being a singer is also the fame, and that means you've got stalkers, you've got fans, you've got all this weird stuff going on around you that normal people don't have. People say to me, why don't you go out, Kiz? When I go out, people know, strangers come up to me, and sometimes I just don't, it's freaky. So, and it's not something you can control, and you don't want to upset those people either, because people are your commodity. They buy your stuff. They buy into you as an artist. So I think with the kids, I try and teach them that you have a really important role in life, even though you think it's just singing. Somebody said to me the other day, yeah, it's just singing. And I said, all right, I'm going to put you to task. And I did. And the minute I did, he started freaking out. I said, see, there you go. And you're a big person. It's like all the big bad boys that come in like all big and bad and tough. Yeah, kids, I'll beat up. So yeah, I did this, so I could do that. All right, sing for me. And they run like little girls outside. And I love it. Sorry.
Kizzy is always in charge. If there's one thing you'll ever learn about Kizzy, Kizzy ultimately is always in charge.
I love my boys. I do. In fact, you know, boys work harder than girls. Girls stand around for ages flossing, and this is all to you girls. You need to sort it out. Is the flossing and the flirting, and while the boys are practicing, and the boys do try really hard. I really do love working with men on the singing projects. In fact, quite a few projects actually. Girls are a bit different. They're a bit yeah. You have to treat them differently as long as you're honest and true, and as me and somebody with a responsibility. You got to protect yourself and really know the rules and set boundaries, but still be able to have a heart when they're sat down crying, telling you one of their stories that could be quite horrific. You can't sit there freaking out and all the rest. You have to listen and use what you have to help them come back to themselves. Does that make sense? So the artist doesn't lose themselves in their woes and their fears and all the rest of it. So you've got to try and bring them back out of that. And it's a lot of work. I think as from a coach's point of view, you're not just teaching someone to sing, you're taking on their life. It's like having your own child. It's like raising a child. It is like pregnancy and raising a child. You go through all the drama and the trauma and the this and the that. And the best part is when they just blossom and their wings open and they're on stage and they're shining and they're singing perfectly and everybody's going, yeah, you go, yes, I've done my job. People are happy. I like happy people. I like people to be happy. I want the whole world to be happy.
Already, if they will be happy if they engage with you. If they haven't
And if
already
they're not,
if they're not, you're going to make sure that they are. If they haven't already sort of found out about the project, they're not aware of the project, how do they kind of connect? Where would they find out more?
well, at the moment, we are actually changing. So this may be quite a good interview. They can contact me directly at Kizzy Morrell at gmail.com, because at the moment we're changing into a charity because we've been a non-profit organisation. I've been around for 20 years, so for a fair few years I was nothing, and then I decided to become a CIC, and now because things are getting a bit bigger, I'm becoming a charity so that I can draw in some decent money. But I've got a load of people to deal with that because I really don't do money, Neil. I can't do it. So if you want to give me millions, that's fine. I can spend it on the kids, but I'm not begging. I'm not begging. These kids deserve to be looked after, and I'm not begging for it. So I've got a team to help on that. So the money side, while I do all the coaching and the inspirational work and all the good stuff, because I just love those kids. I love them. I love them. What can I tell you? I love my world. Music to me is so important. Whether it makes me cry, it makes me laugh, it makes me remember, but it has its place in my life, and it has its place in everybody else's life. The key is to really listen, is to use your ears and listen. And sometimes I can hear music and I know which producer did it because it's got a feel, it's got a taste to it, you know? And sometimes that's good, that's cool. When you recognize people's work, it's like, I know who did that. But, yeah, I think to be creative is a very special gift, and I don't think we should waste it, and I don't think we should abuse it. I think we should use it properly. But you've got to find your own way. People have got to find their own way how to open up those doors, because it's not easy to open up yourself to everybody, to the whole world, to the general public. Being a creative, that is not easy, because we don't, as human beings, we don't like to be looked down on or thought bad about or bullied or anything like that, but we do it anyway. So, but so for an artist, they have to, where I come in, building up their confidence, build up a bit of a thicker skin so that they can handle, and then that they have an outlet so they don't go crazy and start taking drugs and doing all the stupid things some artists do when they come under enormous pressure. People don't realize the pressure behind the scenes. They don't realize that there's pressure being a woman. People want to sleep with you, or they bribe you, or they blackmail you, or they take all your money, or there's loads of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see. We work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, learning songs and just being who we are, and then putting that on stage for other people to enjoy and benefit from. And I think that's important. And I think especially in times like this, when everybody is a little bit worried, a little bit concerned about what's happening to them, their lives, where they're going. I think in times like this, music, creative works are fantastic. People need people like us right now.